Yep.
I got it.
You do that.
All right. Dom FFL asks, the meta, which, I mean, that's a cool way to put it. The meta has been leaning into wide receivers and drafting running backs in rookie drafts later. But what do you do with tight ends in a startup? So we've talked about tight ends a few times, but I think it would be good to talk about maybe even a couple of the specific tight ends. Like, where would we value? Let's not even say it's tight end premium.
Okay.
Let's just say it's a regular old league.
Sure.
Where would you value these top tight ends? The Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Hawkinson, Goddard, guys like that. Kelsey obviously up there, but older. How do we value those guys as opposed to the wide receivers and the running backs?
I value, obviously, if you listen to the show for a long time, I value them very high. I'm a tight end snob, right? Like, I'm a very firm believer in is you have to have one of the top tier tight ends to get the edge over your league mates, because it's the one position where supply and demand is at the minimal. Like, it's a small pool. So either you're a have, which is you have a top 4 guy, or you're not, right? So 2/3 of your leagues are not, for the most part. And there's some guys with some good upside. Like, I think David Njoku could take a big step forward this year and kind of enter the have situation. There's a lot of young guys that we love, like the Greg Dulcich's, the Daniel Bellingers,
Cole Kmet, right?
The Chigs, right. All these guys that offer a good upside. And then when it comes to a startup, I love to attack that range, right? When everybody else is going left, I like to acquire as many of those upside tight ends, like the Bellinger, Dulcich, the Chigs as possible, because usually if I get like 3 to 4 of those guys, and I try to get a lot of them, one of those guys usually ends up hitting, for the most part. So, but for a startup, I want to come away with, Mark Andrews. Like, right now, if I did a startup, my top tier guys that I want are going to be TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Dallas Goedert and Kyle Pitts. Right, those are one of the 4. Kelsey would be a good get, but he's a little old for me in a startup.
It's tough.
The value would have to be there.
Yeah.
But Goddard, he just showed us what we could do in the Super Bowl. Absolute stud, contested catch, hard catch, contour his body, go up there, great body control. Kyle Pitts. TJ Hawkinson's a very solid athletic tight end.
It really got a boost by going to Minnesota.
A huge boost. He went from like really kind of struggling for consistency to just turning it on every single week. So he has, I think, jumped a tier or so here in the Dynasty fantasy football rankings.
Absolutely.
And what's nice is with the depth at wide receiver right now, maybe not so much at running back, like, you don't miss out that much. Definitely at the receiver, because I do want to grab a really young receiver and start up early, but I'm honestly more focused on, I want to grab a young running back. Like, I want one good running back, right? Just one. And that's it. Like, I just want to grab one and figure the rest out later. You can find youth. But, like, I'm dead set on every start I've ever did is I have to get one of those tight ends. I have to get one.
So let me ask you this. Where do you typically do it? Are you afraid to be the first person to start that run?
Nope. Absolutely
I'm not either. I'm not at all. And sometimes it's second round, sometimes it's third round, you know what I mean? Depending on where,
format and setting.
Yeah, format setting, depending on kind of what you're looking at. In a one tight end league, I'm probably not going to do the second round, obviously, but third, fourth round, if it feels right, I go for it. You know what I mean?
And Pitts and Andrews, you're probably going to have to take them in that range,
right,
if you want to get them. And Pitts is a tough one. We'll talk about him a little bit more in the Nerd Herd episode, but the possibility of what Kyle Pitts could be a perennial league winner for the next decade.
Right.
But we just haven't seen it all come together yet. So that's the hardest part about guys like Pitts versus guys like Mark Andrews, where you've seen it. You've already seen that come together for him. So that's always, and where you take those guys and which guys you take will also determine a little bit more if you're on your startup, if you're going more for I'm trying to contend right now. If you draft Travis Kelce in the 4th, better be able to contend right now. Right. So these tight ends are real good indicators too of what am I doing with this team? And there's some questions in here on this episode too of kind of trying to decide where you're going with your team. Are you more of a win now? Are you productive struggle? Are you, a little bit of everything? But those tight ends can be good indicators.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, Kyle Pitts, he falls number 1 on Rich's America's Most Dynasty Wanted list, right? Like, he's the head of the Mafiosa Dynasty family. So, like, he's my number 1 target. And I wouldn't be afraid to take Kyle Pitts. It all depends how the board falls to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to take a running back too high, but if the right running back's there, I'm going to take him, right? Like, I'm a firm believer in grabbing value in startups. That's what I love to grab. Like, I'm not trying to find this player or that position. Like, I don't care about that. I'm looking for value in startups. So for me, Kyle Pitts is right at the back end of the second, top of the third round in a non-superflex tight end premium, probably in the back end of the second in a tight end premium league. And once one person took Kyle Pitts, it's like, okay,
it's on, right?
Yeah. Right away. Like, I'm not missing that run, right? And if somehow it did end up that way, I'll force the issue to make sure I get. What's good now is, like, you can get Dallas Goedert, like,
a couple rounds later.
Yeah, without missing that run. And I would just make sure I overdrafted Dallas Goedert at that point if I had to. So for me, those guys that we mentioned, like, those are my must-haves.
So you would be willing, because that is another big point in these startups. Certain people are willing to make exceptions to their board for certain players or certain positions.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that at tight end, where you would maybe overdraft where it might not feel like a value anymore?
In a 1 QB league, I think the tight end might be the only one that I'm, like, willing to just jump completely, around or something. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Create something crazy, some kind of crazy jump in order to get that position, because they are such a differentiator. And there's, like Rich said, to his point earlier about supply and demand, there's just such a small supply, and everyone needs one.
Right.
Not everyone's going to get one. You know what I mean?
Forget that BS about, like, oh, what an overdraft. Okay, do you want to miss completely? Like, I'd rather draft a full round earlier, which is what, 18 spots, 12 spots ahead of where I would, like, I should have taken them, right? Like, says who? Says Dynasty Nerds ranking, says DLF ranking, says who? Like, this is my team. This isn't Nerds team. This is my team, and I want to make sure I get my guy, right? Like, okay, so instead I don't get T. Higgins and I get Devontae Smith. Yeah, I'd rather have Devonta Smith anyways, to be honest with you. So,
but I think you're making a good point on your values versus ADP.
Yeah.
Can be very different. Would you still be willing to go a round above where your value of the tight end is?
Yeah, to make sure I got my guy.
Okay.
Again, but it depends else who's there, right?
Like, see, that's where I won't be. Like, I would be willing to do it on ADPs. But I don't know if I could go, like, a round higher on my value for the earlier guys.
What if you had 3 guys at the tight end position?
Okay.
2 of them have gone. Your next guy, you're, like, about a round away from really going, but you're up, and you're at an end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I hate being the last guy to take a player in a tier.
But you can't think of it. No, I'm not saying this was a tier break.
All right.
I'm saying these are your 3 guys. Like, these are your 3 guys. 2 of them.
But I would have to take one of them.
There's no way.
The only guy I could take is about a round ahead of where I'm comfortable with.
Right. Say you win this draft. Like, I'm probably gonna grab my tight end round 4 or 5, and then all of a sudden the back end of the second it goes Kyle Pitts. Another person takes Mark Andrews. Boom, boom, and you come up and you're at, like, 3-5, right?
Okay.
And there's a chance now, because those first two went the back end of the draft. They have 2 picks. They take a tight end before you. Would you be willing to risk not getting that good tight end?
I understand why you guys would. I probably would not. I'm a big stick to my board guy.
Okay.
And thinking that I would be able to trade whatever player I got there later to get myself a tight end or something like that if I needed to, assuming they perform to the level that I expect them to perform at. And then I would probably load up on the Bellingers and the Dulciches and those guys and try to get one of those to hit.